Welcome to this online lecture on note-taking. You'll probably have done a lot of note-taking already, but here are some tips and perhaps some things that you'll pick up. If you're new to the course and you've come to this page, welcome. And if you've been on the course a number of years before you've come to this, you're also welcome. I'm going to try and give you something that will be useful for either case. So stay tuned. As you'll know from your involvement in church and other things, you take notes for different things. With the course, you're taking notes for your lectures alongside your reading and your research for your assignments. You'll be making note of things you find online or putting annotations next to things that you're reading. So there's lots of different reasons to take notes, and I'm just going to remind you of the things that you can take these notes for. So you may want to be identifying key ideas. You may want to be deepening your knowledge of key information. You may want to have a record to refer back to, particularly if you've got more than one assignment within that module and the relevant reading you're looking at may come up later. If you've got quite a bit of interest in a topic, you'll find that sometimes you've read so much that you can't possibly get it all into one assignment. And I found that quite useful to have a sort of a repertoire of notes to refer back to for further study. In other cases, people take notes for exams. I found this to be a very good way to revise, but as you know, as of yet on the course, we don't, certainly not at FDA level, have any exams. So that may change, but it's certainly not the case at the moment. You'll want to make good notes and better notes than you've made before. So ask yourself, why are you taking these notes? Do you want a rough overview of a particular subject? Do you want to summarize? Are you looking for deep, in-depth study of a particular subject? And for the purpose of critical engagement with that topic? Who are you making notes for? Is it just for you? Is it for a group? Perhaps you're taking notes on behalf of someone else. The nature of what you're taking notes for will depend on what the purpose is. So, with that in view, you may want to just list main headings and topics in order to prompt your mind back to what you were looking at. This may be particularly useful in a lecture where you want to focus on the conversation going on in the room, but you want to record something for your own future reference. Many people find that drawing or particularly a mind map, but even doodling can help to allow information to be more deeply processed. This is, of course, very reasonable, and we welcome you to do this within lectures, so long as you're not distracting yourself from what's going on. So that's very much down to the person. You will also take notes for, as I said before, specific details. And in the case of writing quotations and recording information word for word, you need to be clear with yourself as to how you go about that. I've had times where I've recorded quotations from something I've read, and I haven't been certain that either what it was a quotation, or what the page was, or things like that. So be as specific as you can. It's very important, and it's much easier than having to go back to all the areas that you were looking at before. and sometimes even trying to trace a book that's been taken out of the library or something else. So it makes life much easier if you get it right in the first place. Um, we'll look a bit in a moment at how you can make sure you do that well. There are different reasons to do recordings. So you may have a verbatim, which is a direct copying, or you may wish to closely paraphrase. And for the reason I said above, I found paraphrasing made a lot more sense because it was written in my words, and I also could be sure that I wasn't going to plagiarize by accidentally quoting something that I hadn't put in, um, by accidentally writing something that wasn't recorded in quotations, and therefore I thought that it was my own paraphrasing of the original text. So it helps actually to paraphrase as you go, unless you are actually lifting a couple of sentences out of a text or something. So be careful on that because you don't want to get into trouble. As I discussed on the previous slide, it's very useful to keep as detailed notes as possible when you're writing an assignment. Um, so not just the things that you're lifting from a text that you wish to quote, but also make sure you get the details of the source down, whether it's a book or a website. For obvious reasons, making these notes on your electronic devices will be much easier to lift, and hopefully it depends on what your handwriting is like, but if you have um, difficult to read handwriting, I recommend that you take as many notes on your laptop as possible, because when you come back to it you may not be able to be sure that you've got the right quote in front of you. um, When it comes to making notes in lectures, this will be quite different. It all depends on how you process and what helps you to remain within the room and focus on the topic. It's very rare for anyone to make a note of all things that are being said and discussed. And the nature of our lectures are that there will be a lot more discussion than perhaps a traditional um, uh, you know, former understanding of what lectures might be. We try to keep it interactive, which makes note taking a bit complicated. So with that, just try and make sure it works for you, the notes that you're taking, um, and you may find that the notes that you're taking will be there to help you refer back to once you've finished with the lecture weekends, so that you can um, just be sure that you've actually remembered what's happened, because there's a lot to take in at any one time. So by all means, make this as a tool that will help you and suit your needs. When you look back at your notes, perhaps you want to add some things in. You may want to record notes in lectures that give you space. Again, if you're doing that on a laptop, it's much easier to add in details than if you've got a notepad. But I still prefer to write things down. Being a student through school before everything was done on computers, it just helps me to process. So that's absolutely fine to do that. Just make sure you've got room to do that for yourself. Again, it should suit you. Um, Perhaps further discussion is useful with another student. If you have regular contact with other students, this makes sense. By all means, send an email to your lecturer if there's something that you've gone back to and it just doesn't make sense. Perhaps your slides within the lecture can assist you to just fill in some of the gaps. Again, this all depends on how you want to process the information that you've been working on in the contact time. as I keep saying, everyone writes notes differently, so do not be put off by someone on a computer next to you or drawing pictures, because it may well be that that is their preferred way of processing the information and recording what they need for future reference. Here are some additional tips on making good notes. You probably already do a lot of these within lectures and at church, but just some prompts here. You'll want the background information, who it is lecturing, what the module is, what the assignment is, when you've written it. All good things to remind you as to what on earth you're writing about. Make sure you can actually read what your notes are saying. Perhaps, again, you want to do this on your computer, because if, like me, you have messy handwriting, that can be quite difficult to follow. Make sure you have space to add in extra notes. This is particularly in paper form note taking. And write on it, if you're doing it online, write on something that you can edit and add in things. Most things do, but don't PDF your notes unless you want to print them off. That might be another option, actually. If you want to make notes online, print them off so that you can annotate them later. Make sure you're very welcome to use annotations, drawings, things that will help you to follow what it is you wrote. So bullet points and arrows, very helpful. If you struggle with the temptation to write things word for word, one tip would be to look at a passage within a text or a website and then put that text to one side and attempt to paraphrase it, because there will be content in there that you really, really want to take hold of, but you don't want to find that you're plagiarizing later, which I've covered already. You may want to use highlighter pens, particularly on books that you've bought. Obviously, you won't do this on books that are out the library or someone's lent you. But colour coding of highlighting can be very helpful to help you organise what it is you want to record for your assignment or not. Obviously, notes should be short and to the point. Otherwise, you're writing essays to yourself, and this can be very difficult to refer back to. You need to make your notes work for you. So you may wish to make notes of your notes if you've already had extensive verbatim style notes that you've taken in a lecture or during something that you want to process more deeply. Following that, you may wish to then have shorter notes in order to refer back to at a later date. Many of you will already know about plagiarism. If this doesn't make sense, please refer to the Referencing Study Skills online lecture. But for those of you who've been on the course much longer, it's useful to just know that if you keep a record of your notes, and were there to be any inquiry into your work being plagiarized, this can be supportive evidence for your case. So really, inquiries into plagiarism tend to be quite early on in the course, as an honest mistake, but in the unlikely possibility that that were to come up, this can be used in your defence. So just a reminder to all of you, make sure that you keep a clear record of what it is you have lifted from other texts, in order that you don't accidentally pass off something as your own, and so that you can actually get credit for the things that you do actually say. And even in cases where you have written something that you would like to include in your assignment, but you can't be sure whether you've lifted it or not, and you may then feel you have to leave it out. With Clear Notes, you're going to know exactly what you have written as an analysis of something, the questions you've asked about that text, from the things that actually the original author has informed you of. It'd be great for you to get full credit for your work. One final tip would be, you could, when you're making your notes, you could have a particular set of colours or highlighter pens that that will have a colour coding to them, so that you would know that always one colour of pen would be about a direct quote. One would be for your paraphrasing, which you would still need to reference, giving the author's name and the year that text was written in your assignment. Again, refer back to the referencing tips if this doesn't make immediate sense to you. And then you'd have another colour with your own thoughts and questions about what it is you're reading. And this helps you know exactly where you are when you come to writing up your assignments, what your thoughts were at the time when you were deeply thinking about those things, but then perhaps you just don't have the opportunity to write that assignment at that point. So it helps you to optimize your time, by just being a little bit more organized as you're going about your notes. I hope that you've picked up some things watching this video. Perhaps you will be prompted to sharpen what you're already doing. I'm sure you're doing very well already, many of you. But I hope that you've been able to pick something up. Most of what I have referred to is from the Allenby Studies Skills Handbook, but I've also offered a few nuggets of my own experience. All the best.